Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. We have a fun show today because we're talking about leading across the country on a 100-plus-year-old motorcycle. Our guest today is Todd Cameron, and Todd was the winner of the Motorcycle Cannonball, just took place this last fall. Todd, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. Yes.
You know, we're going to show some pictures and a little bit of your motorcycle, but before we go there, you're in Monrovia, California. Tell me about what you do in real life when you're not riding old motorcycles.
Oh, I work on old motorcycles, but just for fun. But I do have I've got a small startup business where I rent out RVs and Sprinter vans, basically. So that kind of pays the bills. I'm fooling myself. I'm half retired. The other half, I'll work on motorcycles, cars, trucks, whatever. I'll race. If it's got wheels on it, I'll race it. Wheels are a motor. So I race, bicycles, NASCAR, stock cars, motorcycles, go-karts, dune buggies, everything. I race everything there is. I'm kind of driven as a racer, if you will. Yeah.
Now I'm guessing that you grew up around not only racing, but motors and all that, because I've seen you work on your motorcycle. Some people have teams that come in. You just go to work yourself on it.
By myself. Yeah.
So and you grew up around that?
So I grew up, it really all started, and really from my grandfather, it's JD John Cameron. He had a trucking business. He was kind of a mechanic, and he was way into racing motorcycles, antique motorcycles. So his name was actually JD John. He was a big JD guy. And when AMA kind of outlawed the newer bikes, the flathead stuff and all that in the 30s and the 40s, they outlawed his old JDs, but he had hot rod JDs, and he was a big JD guy and just made those things run like hell. So I kind of picked it up from him, and the whole Cannonball thing came from, I inherited one of his JDs, and in 2018 I took that JD on the Cannonball from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon. That's when this whole thing kind of started, and I kind of went head over heels into the antique stuff.
Well, the old motorcycles are one, when you grow up working on the older stuff, it's different than the brand new things with all the computers and all that, because you have to work. You took that to a whole new level. Tell us about the bike that you ran across the country, and I'll pull up a picture of it and while you're talking, but Tell us about the bike that you took over 3,800 miles from the East Coast to West Coast. What's the story on that bike?
So it's a 1909 Indian. Now my grandfather's rolling over in his grave because he hated Indians, but that's all I could afford. I looked for a Harley. They're super expensive when you get to those pre-teen bikes. They're what they call, when I was looking for one, everybody, they call them wall hangers. Nobody in their right mind would be crazy enough to drive one of these across the country. So they're really difficult to find. They're expensive. I finally found this one. It's a 1909 Indian. It doesn't have a model. It's just a single 400, it's a 27 cubic inch. I bought it as a basket case, completely in pieces. The motor was in, I was scrambling to figure out how the hell to put the motor together. There was nothing there. So I put this basket case together, built the motor. And when I found out is actually the Indian, I think, was far superior than the Harley of this era, because it had the Harleys had an atmospheric intake valve, where the Indian actually has a push rod and a real push rod actuating the valve, which was a big advantage. The Harleys were belt drive then, and this was chain drive then. So that was to me, it was way ahead of its time of the Harley for that era. So I put that bike together pretty much during COVID. It was a big COVID project, and I ran it in the 2021 Cannonball and got about halfway across, and I broke the crankshaft. I had a spare crankshaft. I put it back in. It was the original crankshaft. It was 114 years old. I put the new crankshaft in, finished the day. I didn't get a perfect score in 2021. I did finish and ran across the finish line with it. So I went back to work after 21 and 22 and built a new crankshaft for it, new output shaft, and kind of finessed everything that I could that could break. And I put another 500 or 600 miles on it and tried to break stuff, and finally got the thing where it was reliable. But I'll tell you, even then, the whole valve train on these things is really, really finicky. They're not made to do the miles that we do on those things. So it was really a miracle that it made it without breaking down, 3,800 miles. I'll be honest with you. And it didn't go without problems. I mean, the valve train did break during the day, but I foresaw that and brought spare parts, spare rocker towers, spare valves, all that I carried in those saddlebags on the bike to make sure it would make it across the country.
Well, I have a picture up of this bike, and we just showed the other side. This is one side, but when you look at that bike, those of us that see contemporary bikes, or people out here listening that do that, they don't see pedals on their bikes other than it's some sort of moped.
Right.
You have a whole system for getting that started. Just watching you get started on this is an adventure in and of itself. How do you start that bad boy up?
So yeah, you're right on, Gary. It's a pedal start motorcycle, and basically it's an early moped, really. I mean, you pull in that clutch there that's on, where it says Indian on the gas tank. You disengage the clutch. You can either do it on the stand or you could do it right on the road without the stand down. You start pedaling with the clutch disengaged. You pull the exhaust valve up or the compression release, and the motor will let you turn out. And then you engage the clutch and bump, 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 bump. It just takes off on you. So you can either do it on the stand. You could start it and put it in neutral and take off, or take off like a real moped and just pedal down the street. Boom. And then it takes off.
You make it sound easy. I know better than that because not only have I seen you a few times working on making that happen, but to make it 3,800 miles, I'm going to pull up a picture. This is one thing right here that we're out in one of the canyons. This is just west of Grand Junction.
Yep.
And we're riding up through there, and you can see the roads. This is not a big motorcycle that you're riding. Some of us were riding larger motorcycles and
Right.
newer, like mine was a 97-year-old motorcycle.
Right.
Yours, you had to do some pedaling, I believe, to get up a couple of these bigger hills, including Monarch Pass, which is an 11,000-foot pass.
Right.
How did that go?
Oh, that was the killer of the whole thing, that Monarch Pass, 11,300 feet. And lo and behold, I had nothing but problems right at the base. I actually stuck a valve right at the base of that climb. So now my heart rate was already up. I was panicking. The chase truck was behind you. We could talk about the chase truck, the trouble truck, So I was behind on time because I'd worked on the valve right before the hill. And I think it was about 8 or 10 miles of climbing of that 11,000 feet. So I modified this bike a little bit where I could change the gears. So I went as far as I could, re-geared it. I changed the rear sprocket, changed the front sprocket. You got to change the chains when you do that. It takes, 2 to 4 minutes to do that. But yeah, it was what, 10 miles. And I think it took me about 40 minutes to climb that 10 miles of climbing. And what it was, Gary, I was geared for 23 miles an hour top speed. So I could get it up to 23 miles an hour. And then that thing would just start because it's only 3.5 horsepower. And it just go bop, 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 23, 22, 21, 20. I'd get down to 17 and I could pedal. And I would pedal for about 30 seconds and I'd get it up to 23 miles an hour again. And I'd be out of breath, take a breath. But then I could take a rest for 30 seconds because the motor would be going bop, 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 bop. So it was just back and forth, 30 miles or 23 miles an hour, pedal, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. So I had to be in shape to do it. I'll be honest with you. It was very difficult.
Well, let's go back and talk about what did you do? Because it's one thing to put the motorcycle together, but you had to, like you say, be in shape to be able to do the pedaling aspect of it. But also every day you started early.
Yep.
And you ended close to the end of the day because you had at the speed you were going, getting in and out, changing gears, doing those things. Physically, what did you have to do?
So I treated it as a training for like a marathon or whatever. So I actually started swimming, running, biking, a lot of biking. And then I lost 25 pounds too, because the weight makes a huge difference on it. So, but my biggest training, I actually live in the hills here. I live up a hill. So I would go about a quarter mile, and I wouldn't do it every day, but I'd do it a couple days a week. I would disengage the clutch and pedal that motorcycle, which is 220 pounds, I think it is. And it's so difficult to do. I would pedal it up my street, up a hill, a quarter mile, and then I'd coast back down. And that was my training, was pedaling an unpowered motorcycle up and down the hill.
Well, it took effort, I know, to get across the country. Were there any parts that, when you look back and you kind of remember, I was ending up the other night putting on the rest of my stickers. If there's any reward for this, is your sticker at the end of the day if you have a perfect score. And I was putting on my A stickers. And it was a reminder of each of those different segments. When you think back, what were the favorite segments along that 3,800-mile cross-country trip?
I really dug being underpowered and a racing guy. I'll be honest, the downhills I just loved. And I don't know if you've seen some of my videos. I videoed some of it, but I'm pedaling up the hills and just bop, 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 slow. But I'm a racer and I'm like, man, I love now on the downhills, the power doesn't matter anymore. And I could actually carve and, I couldn't quite drag a knee because you sit so high on that motorcycle. But I just loved the scenery was unbelievable. I just loved, those climbing through it, like that last scene you just showed there where we were up in before in Colorado there. But yeah, just carving down the hills and, actually passing people on my old 3.5 horsepower. And I'd pass other motorcycles or other competitors going down the hills, cutting the corners so tight.
So some people that don't understand the Cannonball, talk about the race itself. Was it about time? Was it about distance? Was it about miles? Explain that for everyone.
So the whole Cannonball is really a rally. The one thing is you don't know, what city you're going to, but you don't know the route you're getting there. So part of the challenge is actually understanding a rally map, which they hand, and we only get it 30 minutes before we depart every day. So part of it's a rally and being able to follow those instructions properly and making sure you hit all the checkpoints. And then 2, you're on time. So it's not really a race and a speed race, although with somebody like me, it kind of is because I have to be able to, you have to maintain, I believe he's showing 45 miles an hour, 35, 45. You got to be able to maintain that. With my motorcycle, I can't always maintain 45 or 35 miles an hour if I'm climbing a hill. So I need to make up some time when I can, just to kind of bank some time. So what I would do, I go in the morning, it's cool. I'd run pretty hard in the morning to bank some time so that I would make it on time. So the rules are, you start at 7 a.m., you got to be in by 5, could be 5:30, but you've got to call it 300 miles in that day before the time. If you don't make it on time, you lose points. So that's kind of how it works. It's a rally where you're following a rally map. You don't know what route you're taking. 2, you got to keep the motorcycle running the entire time and get in on time every day. If you don't get in on time, you lose points, you lose your perfect score. To win the Cannonball, you have to have a perfect score. You have to finish every day on time, all the miles.
You know what? People think, boy, there's one guy out doing this. You had a competitor that was right on your tail that was doing a good job, and the difference was your motorcycle was older, just a little bit older.
Just a little bit older. That's right. That's part of the rules is a tie, because how many people would we have? 32 people got a perfect score, which you did. And then you go to the tiebreakers, which is the oldest motorcycle. If you have the same age motorcycle, then the next tiebreaker is the oldest rider.
Yeah, so I think you beat out an Harley, right? A 2010 or a
1911. 1911. Yeah, Dave Courier on his 1911. And he'd proven that bike was a solid bike. I mean, it was well developed and tuned. He had won the 21 Cannonball on that 1911 Harley. Yeah.
Well, that was fun being able to do that. When you look at the whole race and you look back, what do you feel about our country? Because after making it across, it's such a good feeling to be on 2-lane roads. And the people that we happened to meet along the way were just terrific.
Oh, it's true. That's why I do it, Gary. It's just to travel at 35 miles an hour on 2-lane roads across the United States. It's just, I love it, dude. I fell in love with it in 18 when I started. And I said, I can't believe I'm from the West Coast. I've never seen so much corn in my life, these cornfields, but to be able to see our country at 35 miles an hour on a 2-lane road, there's nothing better. And like you said, I'm from California. The people aren't so nice out here. I cannot believe how nice the people are in the rest of the country, all across, people, they go out of their way. I met an old guy on one of the chases and he's out following me, during this race, and helping me out. Hey, do you need something? People are so nice. Yeah. It's unbelievable, dude. It's just, you have to do it, dude. I mean, I will do it as long as I can. I just love doing it, seeing this country like that.
Todd, if you'd hold on for just a second, I don't want to take a break and find out what's next for Todd Cameron, because we'll talk about your feature in the Wall Street Journal, but that sort of sets the stage and sets a pretty high bar for what's next. Our guest is Todd Cameron today on Forward Ever. Back with more after this.
The most successful investors are those that can keep their emotions in check and take a longer-term view of what portfolios will be worth 3 to 5 years down the road. I'd say that's the most important in determining what investor outcomes are. Market corrections will continue in the future. We've seen many of them over the years, only to see equity prices rise higher and that'll be the case in the future.
Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever. Leading in challenging times, our guest is Todd Cameron, who led across the country in the Motorcycle Cannonball. We talked about some of the adventures that went along the way. Todd, first off, was there ever a point that was more scary than others? I had one in my race. Was there one in yours?
Yeah. Remember we talked about this bike? I talked about making it go, but we didn't talk about making it stop.
Stop.
So that 1909 originally had a V-band brake, and it was good for one stop, and then it would get hot and it would never work. When I first started riding it, I had one brake, the original brake on it, and I'd go to a stoplight and I'd go to the next stoplight, and you had to make a right-hand turn because you weren't stopping. So some of these guys, you're allowed to put whatever you want for brakes. I didn't think it was right. A lot of guys put disc brakes or whatnot. I don't think it looks proper. I put some old moped brakes. So I have a front brake and a rear brake. Problem is that motorcycle is never made to have a front brake. I did a panic stop in my testing and I folded the forks because they weren't made to have brakes on them. So the front brake is there, but it really doesn't do much. So I have a rear brake. It's not that great either. I don't know why. So it was scary for me. I was actually screwing around. I told you, going fast on the downhills. I was cutting some corners, and I was chasing down Joe Ferry actually on a Harley and trying to pass him. And I was showboating like an idiot. And it was a decreasing radius corner. And I hit all the brakes I could, and it wouldn't stop. And I went off into the dirt, bounced off of the side of the wall. You know what I mean? And I don't know how I kept it going, but that was scary. And then one other one, I don't remember the name. Remember we went straight up what's that road? It was pretty steep getting up, and it was a little one-lane one that we went on a ridge.
Oh, yeah, that was in just west of Colorado Springs, and it was a Skyline Drive.
Skyline Drive, yeah. And I got out of control on that. On the downhill of that, I overshot a corner and got out into the dirt. So that was the scary part for me. Other than when I broke down, it was scary. Like before I went up Monarch Pass and I stuck the valve, and I'm like, it's game over. I didn't know what happened. This motor stopped running, and it's just, you got to work quick because you don't have any time. But it's like, what happened? The motor's not making any power. Did something break internally? You know what I mean? And you get scared and your heart starts going because you're like, it's game over. I'm going to be getting on the trouble trailer now because the motor's not, and I'm doing as much as I can, but it's scary and really gets you going when that kind of stuff, when you break down, that's what's scary.
Yeah, our group called it the trailer of shame. You really didn't want to be on that trailer, and it would come up behind you and your heart would start racing. You're going, boy, what do I do to make sure that I don't get on that trailer?
Right.
But you made it across the country. You did all of that, the fun and excitement. The friends that you meet along the line are just amazing because they're in the same situation that you are, trying to get their motorcycle across the country along with their teams to get that done. You didn't have a team. You did most of the work by yourself, correct? And you slept in your van. Is that right?
Pretty much. Yeah. I had a motorhome because I rent motorhomes. So I had a motorhome. So I did have one guy with me that could do half of the race, my buddy, Tom McBride, and he drove my motorhome. So he was kind of my crew, for driving the motorhome, but pretty much I kind of like, I don't know. I know the motorcycle in and out. I built it. I know the motor. So I like to do my own work on it. I don't really need a crew for it. And it wears you out. Sometimes you're working late at night. It'd be nice to be able to be done and go sleep, to get ready for the next day. But there's Jay there.
Yeah. So anyway, my next question is, what are you doing next? And here's some of your buddies out there. I have to say, you also run into kind of crazy people like this, but we're not messing around with that. We'll go back to this guy. Okay. But what's next for you, Todd, when you're out doing things? What do you want to do next?
I'll probably do the Cannonball again. I think I don't want to do it on the same bike twice. I don't think that's the way to go. I'd like to do it on a different bike. I've got my these bikes are so, I don't know how you top it though. I really can't get anything that much older. I do have my eyes on a 1909 Harley Davidson. I don't know if it's feasible. I'm going to try to get it. It's a friend of mine has it. I don't know if he'll let me, take it and rebuild it for him and make it Cannonball worthy, but it would be a challenge because I'm all about the challenge. I don't want to do something again, make it easy. So he's got an 09 Indian, '09 Harley Davidson single, which is atmospheric valve and belt drive. So Do I try that? I don't know. That may be my next thing. We'll see. We'll see.
That sounds like a fun adventure. Certainly some work to make that happen because Cannonball happens every other year. So it'd be 2 years down the road, I believe 25, if I figure that right. So a little time to get that ready to go.
Yep.
Todd, I want to say appreciate the work that you put into that. You were featured in the Wall Street Journal.
Yes.
That was an interesting follow-up because I know the Cannonball's been going on for multiple years.
Yes.
This was a great story that kind of featured the work that all of the writers put in to be able to do that, but specifically you on make it on that 1909 motorcycle.
Right. Yeah. The Wall Street Journal I don't know. Somebody found out, one of my buddies that knows somebody at the Wall Street Journal had mentioned to the guy, and it was AJ Bime, I think his name. And so he reached out and he's all, wow, that he does a weekly or bi-weekly story on automotive, motorcycle or whatever. And he was just blown away. He says, man, this is a great story. And he kind of went into the history with my, how I got involved with my grandfather doing this stuff and all that. And he kind of chronicled the whole thing, kind of let me talk about, exactly what happened. But yeah, that was pretty killer. Like one of the guys, Richard, the Zundap guy was saying, if your sport is featured in something, other than the, AMCA magazine, that really says something about the sport, that it's going somewhere. So that was pretty killer, I thought. Yeah.
So if people want to follow you and follow what you're doing as you work on these different, where do they go to do that?
Just I'm on Facebook. My Todd Cameron on Facebook, or my Instagram is, I think, Todd Cameron 99. 99 is my race number I've had forever. That'd be the only place to follow me, is on Facebook or Instagram, really. Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time to be able to visit with us today. It's great. Those that don't know about the Motorcycle Cannonball, you can go online. You just type in Motorcycle Cannonball and there'll be videos and all the different things you can come up with that. But it's the effort. And when I tell people about it, it is the cross-country 2-lane roads and the great people that you meet and the friends you pick up along the way that just make it very fun. So Todd, thanks for leading all of us. And when you talk about leading in challenging times, there's challenges when you get 3,800 miles on a 1909 motorcycle.
Yes.
Congratulations on your win.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it.
Our guest today is Todd Cameron, winner of the 2023 Motorcycle Cannonball. Thanks for listening. The program is brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.